You are listening to the I Choose My Best Life podcast with Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, a show that is dedicated to helping you live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally. For additional resources, visit ichoosemybestlife.com.
Are you tired of feeling trapped by the negative things you say to yourself about yourself? It's time to break free and live the life of freedom God intends for you to have. In my book, Set Free to Live Free, Breaking Through the 7 Lies Women Tell Themselves, I share some practical strategies to help you overcome those self-limiting beliefs and embrace a life of purpose, passion, and joy. Say goodbye to those doubts and fears and step into the life God has for you, one that is full and free. Get your copy wherever books are sold. Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Saundra, and you're listening to I Choose My Best Life. Today, I have with me Kathleen Cooke, and I am excited to chat with her about a new initiative that she's doing. Actually, I don't know how new it is, but it's new for me, and I believe it's something that many of you will be very interested in. It's called Influence Women. And Kathleen, if you're not familiar with her, she is the founder of this organization. She is also a producer and writer and does a whole lot more. So I'm going to let her introduce herself officially so that all the details. Then we're going to jump into how do we become women who are of influence, who are living out our lives in a way that we feel free to honor God with our gifts and our talents and our creativity. So Kathleen, thank you so much for joining me. Start by just sharing a little bit, because I did not do your bio justice. You have done a lot.
Thank you so much, Saundra. It's so great to be with you. And hello to all of you out there, women that are joining us today. I am so inspired that you would listen in and care about yourself, because it's so important that we care for ourselves. And a little bit about me. I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. Growing up, Sin City, my father was recruited to be the first basketball coach in 1949 for Las Vegas High School. Bugsy Siegel had written his first, had started his first casino in 47, and Vegas was literally a watering hole, and they had to create a community there. So it was an interesting place to grow up as a child. I saw actually what happened behind the bright lights of Las Vegas and the people coming in trying to find fame and fortune, and what happened to their lives, and the transitions and the transient society that was there. And I believe God actually prepared me as a child to see what I do now and work in Hollywood. So I'm a Screen Actors Guild actress. My husband and I own a company, a production company called Cooke Media Group. And by the way, Cooke has an E on the end. I'm Cookie, Kathleen Cooke E. And our production company, again, is Cooke Media Group. And we consult and work with organizations globally. We've done Super Bowl spots and short films and all sorts of things. You can just Google that. Out of that came our focus on helping specifically Christians, those who are believers in Christ, to learn how to use media effectively to tell their stories and to live out what they're seeing in our culture and our world today, and helping that change. Because where are we today, Saundra? Our eyeballs are in our screens. Our eyeballs are in media. The statistics tell us that on an average, we see about 5,000 media messages a day. There are more cell phones in India than there are toilets. And I was just in India for the 7th time this last year, and they need toilets in India. Sometimes we just have to plow through and know as women that we can make a difference in the world, in where God has us at any given moment. And so Influence Women came out of that in my work with Hollywood as a Screen Actors Guild actress for many years in our production company. And I saw the need for women to grow in their skills and talents. I tell everyone, if you own a cell phone and you are on social media, you're in media, and sometimes much more so than the average person. So my heart is to see women flourish in where God has them. I love the story of Nehemiah and his heart to rebuild the wall. So if you haven't read Nehemiah in a while or haven't ever read Nehemiah, go back and study Nehemiah and how God impressed on him the need to rebuild the wall in Jerusalem and why he did that. But one of the things that came out of that was that when he was able to rebuild the wall, and he did it in 52 days, which that's crazy. And so most people have been trying to do it for hundreds of years and they've never been able to do it. So how was he able to do it? He prayed, he fasted, he had a plan. But most importantly, 21 times in Nehemiah, it says, Nehemiah, that so-and-so built, and next to him, so-and-so built, and next to him, so-and-so built. So God has us where he has us for a reason and a purpose. He has us to rebuild the wall. And what's the wall? It's who we are and our faith and our belief as Christians in this culture. It's rebuilding the walls of the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, goodness, kindness, long suffering. So sometimes in our culture and our world today, we need to rebuild specifically those walls where God has us. And so God has your listeners, I believe, today in a certain place on his wall, and he's going to help them and encourage their lives to just build where they are. They don't have to do the whole wall. They don't have to do everything. They just have to be where God has them right now at that moment.
Amen. That's so true. And I love that you use Nehemiah, because one of my favorite parts of that, which fits right in, the reason that we are actually together is because we are at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville. And one of the things when you mention Nehemiah, what comes to mind is this. Part of it talks about them building with one hand with their weapon in the other hand. And as Christians, when you are in media, whether that is on a screen or if it's on a screen, like on your phone screen, you are broadcasted across many people, some who will agree with you, some who will not. And so there's a level of confidence and courage that is required. However, a lot of girls and women do not have confidence. What are you finding is one of the way or things or mindsets that's holding women sometimes back from taking those courageous and bold steps towards being more vocal?
Yes, great question. And I think women particularly struggle with this. I think we call it sometimes the imposter syndrome, where we feel like we're not good enough. We don't have the education and we're not made pretty enough for to be on camera or to do acting or whatever God calls us to do, educated enough. We don't have enough money. We didn't come from the right family. It's the enough syndrome, right? We don't have enough. Guys, somebody will come to them and say, could you do this job? And they'll say, absolutely, I can do it, and have no idea how to do it. And they'll usually go to a woman and say, could you help me do this? Because the women do know how to make things happen, right? We do. And so women, I believe, need to step up and just say, yes, I may not have all my ducks in a row right now, but God's going to be with me and going to uplift me. And I can find out how to make this happen. We are women who make things happen. And I think God just embeds those things into us. I think that's one of the reasons he allows women to give birth, because we are able to birth things and to grow forward. And so sometimes just being courageous there are a lot of aspects to that. Sometimes we do need a little bit more education. Sometimes we do need a little bit of support around us, and being willing to accept the fact that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. I'm in the film business. I'm in the media business, and I can't do things by myself. If you've ever looked at the end of a film scroll, you'll see all those hundreds of names that go on for 15 minutes after the film is done, because there are so many people that are involved in creating those films, creating a music video, creating some type of artistic endeavor. We have to have each other around us, which is why, for me, God called me to start Influence Women, because I believe that we have to collaborate. Sandra, I believe too that as Christians, we don't just network with each other, but we net weave with each other. I believe that God actually calls us as Christians, particularly, whose nucleus, whose foundation is centered on Jesus, is so much bigger and broader than the world because we have him as the needle point that goes through our weavings. He is that tip of the spear that keeps us connected. And so as we net weave together, we create this beautiful fabric of beauty and elegance, of sustenance and sustaining that can actually be seen by our world and culture today. As women, yes, I encourage you to stand up, to be courageous. There's some great resources out there. Primarily, though, our resource is, for me, is biblically based. I wrote a devotional called Hope for Today, Stay Connected to God in a Distracted Culture, because we are so distracted today by media and what we see in our screens. But it's also based on a 4-day format. So it's the number 4, Hope for Today. And the reason it's based on a 4-day format is because it's based on an 8-year, $1 million study on the habits and activities of Christians and what we do that actually changes our lives and that can be seen by others around us. They found that they studied actually how often we go to church, read our Bible, watch podcasts or listen to podcasts like what we're doing today, all these kind of things. What's the most important thing that actually turns the dial in our lives? And they found it was Bible engagement 4 or more times a week. In fact, they found that when you're only reading your Bible 1 to 3 times a week, you'll make no significant choices or changes any different from someone who never reads the Bible or is an unbeliever. So I tell everyone, personal trainers, physical trainers will say, when you start working out your body 4 or more times a week, you will actually see a physical change in your body. 1 to 3 times, you maintain it and you're getting healthy and you will have some changes. But when you start working 4 or more times, your body really is physically noticeable. That body is going to die and decay one of these days. What are you doing 4 times a week to encourage and grow your inner body, your soul, your spirit that is going to learn and live on for eternity? And so Hope for Today helps you then organize your week so where you can just pick 4 days a week, take your cell phone and schedule your time. And then at the end of each a week, it allows you to write in the journal part of how God's engaged with you during that week. I find it so important, Saundra, that we pass on our engagement with God to the next generation, to someone close to us. When my parents died, my brother and I didn't fight over our property and the homes and the cars or whatever was left. We fought over my parents' Bible, because they had written in the Bible, and we wanted to have that engagement, their engagement invested into our lives. And so I believe that's one of the failures we've had, even as Christians, is not passing on those stories, that the way that we failed on this week, or the way that we were encouraged this week, or successful, or challenged. And writing in the journal is so important on your engagement and having it there. And so the devotional is set up that way. And I encourage your listeners, if you're not in the scriptures 4 or more times a week, to get there. We have great self-help books as Christians, how to have a better life, how to have better kids, better finances, but we're not reading our Bible. And statistics show us 70% of drug and alcohol use fails when we're reading our Bible 4 or more times a week. Anger, bitterness fails by 40%. I tell women, you know what? Obesity even falls by 20%. It's a diet. It's a diet journal for us. It's a diet document for us. So get in the Word and watch your life change.
So important. I think so often we think that it requires too much time, but when you look at it the way that you've described it, it's ongoing, it's building you up, it's strengthening you, it's building up your spiritual resilience, for lack of a better word, to be able to get to that place.
It's going to build up your courage.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it'll build up your courage.
Absolutely. And one of the things you touched on, I want to make sure that we even go deeper with, is that whole collaborative piece. I love what you described there, not networking, but net weaving. And when I first started out in podcasting and when I first started out writing, so that whether it's media or publishing or when I started speaking, there was always in all 3 of those areas a bit of a hush. It was almost as if I hate to give this analogy, but it was almost like when you're in high school and you're like, you're not one of the popular kids yet. Everybody knows something you don't quite know, and they won't tell you what you need to know to be able to actually go further. And and I always wondered, I'm like, there can't be a competitiveness because they're so far ahead. What is the competition? Because they're so far ahead. But so I love the fact that you are bringing along industry experts with people who are just starting out and are just got caught the vision, so to speak, of what God is speaking to them, and bridging some of that gap so that women aren't having this moment that I had for all those years, like pleading with God for a mentor. What touched your heart to start really moving in that area?
I lived it. I was a Screen Actors Guild actress and coming into Hollywood young and trying to make it in that industry. It's tough. The arts industry is tough, whether you're in the music business, in the film business or television business, whatever it is, podcasting, it's tough. It's a full market. And so how do you cut through that clutter? And I have found that the way to do that is to embrace your unique self. What you spoke about in high school is so true. We had our little cliques, don't we? It continues on. I often look at where we are in some of our churches and ministries and stuff. It's a clique issue. It's who do you know and who do you know and why don't I know this person? You know what? You have to grow where God has you. It goes back to the story again of Nehemiah and building where you are and God and embracing who you are uniquely. I love the fact that I have two daughters, and not only from my own personal background, but my daughters are both in the arts industry as well. One's in New York as a songwriter and a composer. She's in the music industry, so I understand the struggles on that end. I have another daughter who's in the film industry and a granddaughter coming up now she's been in I don't know how many plays already. So the acorn doesn't fall too far from the tree, does it? But when I'm in saying all that, the struggle is real. And so we have to embrace who we are in our unique selves. I love how my two daughters growing up many times slept in the same room, ate the same food, went on the same vacations, read the same books, the whole thing. Were involved together in everything that we did. And yet they were so unique in where they are today. They are totally different in so many ways. And yet they are united when they come together. And I saw the ability for women to understand we all come from unique positions. God's given us a unique place. And yet when we come together and collaborate together, then there is synergy, there is explosion that happens. I believe one of the tricks of the devil more than anything else is to keep us separated and to keep us saying, oh, I'm not good enough, or I am not that way, or I don't have those skills. Go for it. I'm telling women, there are like 463 scriptures in the Bible to the word go and 62 to the word stay. So go for it. Go be your unique self and know that it's okay that you don't think the same, that you might be an outlier for a while, but you're learning and you're understanding and you're observing. We have to be that. I'm telling women, lead with your skills and your talents. That's where you'll get recognized. Don't worry about if you're the most popular person on the planet or you have all the followers on Facebook or Instagram. Just be who you are. God's called you. And if you just reach a few, that's okay too. God doesn't call all of us to reach the masses. Sometimes the masses aren't what's important in God's heart. It's those one or two people who are also outliers and outliers that need to be reached because they are going to grow and be that significant person in the future. So just do what God's called you to do where you are.
Amen. As I was listening to you speak, one of the things that came to mind that I'm seeing quite often right now is there are a lot of people who they have a lot of creativity. They're visionaries is what I would probably term them. Their creativity may be a little bit even ahead of the current time. And what I fear is that they are stifling some of their creativity to fit into culture. What would you say to that person who maybe they're a singer and their voice is a little different, or how they approach music is different, or maybe there's someone who's in theater and film and they have something in AI that they're wanting to merge with Christianity, but it's so different that they are actually holding back from fully stepping into their creative talent?
You just hit on a great subject, and I'll go back to my two daughters again. My oldest daughter, she just ran with from the very beginning, knowing that she was going to be an actress. I looked at her at the age of 3, doing a little short little thing for a church event, and looking at her going, oh my goodness, I know where she's headed for the rest of her life. The younger one in the music industry, she watched, she observed, she was one of these people that were a little bit different, a little bit off. The arts too, Sandra, are so vulnerable. We have to break open a wrist, a vein sometimes, and be vulnerable in front of people. And it's so hard because it can be, especially in today's culture of social media, where you put something out there and it's not seen by years ago 2 or 3 people, or maybe 100 people. Now it's seen by 100,000 people who can criticize you. And boy, do they, because they are hidden. They don't have to come out and say, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to criticize you even on top of it. And so I see exactly what you're talking about in my two daughters, because my younger daughter from the very beginning just saw things differently. And yet she always felt a little bit off because her older sister was just going down this path like full steam, and everything just seemed to fall into line, because she was my younger daughter used to call her the raw girl. She was the cheerleader in school and she was the most popular one and everything. And yet Bailey was over here, and I would hear from so many adults talk about Bailey, my younger daughter, more because she would see things differently, and from a mature point of view, that sometimes my daughter, who was just floating down this path, zooming down the rapids with what she was doing, didn't have time to really see and pay attention to. My younger daughter was. And the two of them, like I said, went this separate direction, and yet they are united in what they do. It's so funny. I remember in high school walking into my younger daughter's high school biology teacher on a back to school night, when you go and look at all their work. And this biology teacher looked at me and he said to me, he said, I've worked in the school system for 25 years, and I see families come through all the time. And he said, I've never seen two girls come through so completely different from the same family. And I look at that today and say, that was the most wonderful compliment I could have ever had as a parent, because like I said, I raised them the same. They ate the same food, sometimes dressed in the same clothes. And yet at the same time, they were so completely different. God has us in our unique place. We have to be okay with that. And we have to know and lead with our skills and our talents. Let God take care of the rest for us. Maybe it's just those 1 or 2 people that we meet that we can change and affect their lives in. We have to be okay with that. Maybe we're going to reach the masses, but maybe we're only going to reach those 1 or 2. And we've got to be okay with that.
Kathleen, I want to make sure people know how to connect with you and to get more information about Influence Women. So what's the best way for people to find out more and share a little bit about some of the current resources that you have?
Love to share with that. So you can go to influencewomen.org, which is all about influence women. We also have it's part of the mothership, I call it, of the Influence Lab. So that the influencelab.com is the mothership. That focuses on what we do globally. So I was in 9 countries alone last year, speaking and teaching and helping those boots on the ground how to use media and tell their story effectively to the culture in the world today. So it's the influencelab.com or influencewomen.org. They can send me a specific message through info@influencewomen.org. I'd love to connect with them through that. Social media, we have a national chapter group now with 6 various chapters around the United States, Nashville, Atlanta. We will host and launch Houston this year as well, and Baton Rouge, of Hollywood, Orange County, California. And so we're growing a network of women and chapter groups. So each of those have their own handles. So we have Hollywood, or @Influence Women Hollywood, or @Influence Women Nashville. So you can follow us on social media as well. I also have a blog site at KathleenCooke.com, so they can learn more about me there. And again, Cook has an E on the end. I'm Cookie. So it's Kathleen with a K, Coke. So Kathleen Cooke at Cook Media or KathleenCooke.com.
Excellent. And I'll link to those in the show notes as well as to the social media so that everyone will be able to quickly find you, and also link to your book, Hope for Today, so that those who may want to take that journey with you, and I call it take on that challenge of 4 days a week, because I think that spiritual training is just as important.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me today, Saundra, and bless you and bring you rest in all you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathleen. It's been a pleasure. Until next time, everyone, live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally.